What is going on, y'all? Psych Perspectives, giofvcks here, and in this video, I am going to discuss narcissistic parents and enmeshment, um, emotional incest between parents and their children and offspring. This can be narcissistic mothers and their daughters and their sons. This can be narcissistic fathers and their daughters and their sons. Narcissistic parents and their kids. Narcissistic grandparents and their grandchildren. Narcissistic parental guardianship figures, okay, parental figures and their offspring. All right. This is a request. Viewer request videos. I plan on doing these, but there will be a fee for the viewer request because, again, it's labor, it's work, it's research, and I'm providing content. So it will eventually have a fee to it. However, this video has been requested numerous times, and I have been meaning to do a video discussing this for a while. So let's get into it. I'm going to read some information from the articles that I am getting this information to back up what I'm talking about and to give you guys some facts, some data, some more background information. And there will be additional resources, articles, links to check out. I strongly recommend that you also do your own research and critically think and investigate. All right, let's get into this. Of course, I'm going to be smoking on some sativa. This is from Common Citizen. I'm in Michigan. I have my medical marijuana card. I've had it for 4 years. I'm 28, almost 29. It's also legal in Michigan for recreational use. A sativa, Common Citizen, and yeah, time to shine. And let's get into it. And of course, always, water. But I'm going to read some of this. So I'm looking at good therapy, okay? Emotional incest, also known as covert incest, has nothing to do with incestuous sexual abuse. Rather, it is an unhealthy emotional relationship between a parent and a child that blurs boundaries in a way that elevates the child into an adult role. The parent looks to the child for emotional support. In some cases, the parent also seeks practical support from the child. In an emotionally incestuous relationship, the child is expected to meet the needs of the parent, rather than the parent meeting the needs of the child. This type of relationship, which is similar to enmeshment, is inappropriate and can be psychologically damaging for the child. Emotional incest often occurs when the parent does not have their needs met by a romantic partner or when the family dynamic is broken. Substance abuse, infidelity, and mental health issues tend to increase the dependency of the parent. So I just read that briefly, and I want to talk about emotional incest and emotional enmeshment because I personally, now you know me, always keeping it all the way funky, keeping it 100 Hassan Campbell style. In my own personal life, full of transparency, I dealt with emotional incest, and I didn't realize that that's what it was until I got into therapy. I've been in therapy for a little over 2 years, almost 2.5 years, okay, come November. It'll be 2.5 years. I started therapy Cinco de Mayo, May 5th, 2019. It's an ongoing thing. And for me, I dealt with emotional incest in the sense that my mother suffers from mental health issues that and also trauma and abuse that she dealt with growing up that pretty much made it where really wasn't a functioning adult, let alone a functioning parent. My mother was 22 when she had me. I always basically had to feel like my mother was essentially a big sister, not really a parent. And a lot of times I pretty much took on an adult role. I might have been a kid, I might have been a little baby, I might have been 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 17, 18, 19. 22, 23, 24, and now I'm 28, almost 29, and I am an adult. But as a child, I always felt responsible for my mother's well-being. You know, everything from making sure that her physical health was together to making sure that she ate food, you know, always having to be emotionally available and providing emotional support to a grown-up that it really wasn't my responsibility to do. I was a child. It wasn't my responsibility to bear my mother's trauma, her mental health issues, and her ongoing decisions that she was making because of her traumatic experiences and because of substance abuse and because of mental health issues. I had to deal with a lot of trauma that I had no business dealing with. Again, you're made to be an adult. You have to grow up really fast in these situations. Let's light it up. And in many cases, you pretty much feel like your childhood was stolen from you because you weren't really allowed to be a child. And that wasn't just with my mother, that was also how it was with my grandmother. And I keep saying was, it still is with my mother and my grandmother. You know, there's a lot of situations where I'm just like, whoa, this really is not my responsibility. It's not my job to be trying to figure out where my mom is. My mom often left me with my grandmother, and my grandmother and grandfather essentially had custody of me. And I know in hindsight is 2020, my mom thought she was doing the best thing that she could do, which in many ways it was. She was unable to care for me the way that she needed to, so she left me in the care of my grandparents. But that caused abandonment issues for me. This is another reason why I am extremely pro-choice. A lot of people have no business having kids. And it's not fair to the child to have to grow up in dysfunctional, toxic, mentally, physically, sexually abusive households. And then you wonder why we have so many broken, severely traumatized grown-ups running around causing mayhem. Because it starts at home. I know people don't want to hear that, but a lot of this starts at home. Now let's continue reading on. I'm not going to read every part of the article, but I'm just trying to give you my real life experiences and full transparency, and then also give you information, data, facts, right? So let's get back into it. What does emotional incest look like? Emotional incest occurs when the child believes they are responsible for their parents' emotional well-being. And this is exactly what it felt like. With my mom, when she was upset, when she was angry, I felt like that was my fault. That was my problem. I needed to do something to make her happy again, to make her smile. And with my mom, she's bipolar. She didn't get formally diagnosed until 2008, 2009. And you think about, by that time, I was 16. So I had spent 16 years already dealing with someone who had undiagnosed mental illnesses and wasn't being treated for those mental illnesses. So my childhood was very chaotic, to say the least. Always dealing with those mood swings happening. You know, one minute she's happy, she's outgoing, she's laughing, she's talkative, she's being nice, she's being caring, she's being attentive. And then next thing you know, she's in the room, she's quiet, she's down, she's out, she's going through a lot. You know, her mood has plummeted. And I'm sitting up here walking on eggshells trying to get my mom to want to be around me, to want to deal with me. And the reason I did that a lot is because she wasn't in my life 24/7, 365. She wasn't in my life full time. I would go months, up to damn near a year, without seeing my mom. And so when she was around, I would be like, oh my God, my mom's here. Oh my God, my mom's here. I love her. I can't wait, blah, blah, blah. So I'm trying to be on my best behavior, again, walking on eggshells, AKA people pleasing. A lot of this emotional incest, this enmeshment, it causes unhealthy behaviors in the persons that are dealing with it and are being inflicted with this type of abuse. And this is child abuse. I don't care how you try to twist and turn it. It's psychological mental abuse that no one should have to be enduring as a child, let alone as an adult. Okay? So this could happen when the parent talks to the child as though the child were an adult. My grandmother did this all the time. You know, she would literally sit up and have these conversations that, again, why are you having this conversation with a 6-year-old? Like, it would be information that was about grown-ups, adults, right? Other adults, you know, whether this be her siblings, my mom, what's going on with my mom, her and my papa, whatever. You're having conversations about me, with me, about adults that has nothing to do with me. I'm a kid that's looking at Rocco's Modern World, which I probably shouldn't have been looking at either, but I'm looking at Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, and you're having these adult conversations with me. And you're, again, but in the same breath, the gaslighting, in the same breath, stay in a child's place, but I'm going to confide adult situations with a kid. And a lot of this happens in our communities, in our households, okay? In our families, okay? And it is inappropriate, okay? The parent may request advice from the child regarding adult issues and can even place the child in the role of therapist. Yes, I always felt like I had to listen and be giving advice and recommendations and suggestions. And if I didn't have an answer right away, I felt guilty. I felt bad. You know, and I'm still dealing with this at almost 28, nearly 29. I am still dealing with this. I am still healing from this. You know, this is very... Nobody deserves this. No one should have to go through this. You know, nobody should be doing this. And if you are currently a parent, a guardian, an adult, and you are recognizing that you may be exhibiting some of these behaviors and doing this to children and offspring and your kids and young people, minors, you need to stop. I am begging you. You need to stop and you need to seek mental help. Go to a therapist. Go to a counselor. Okay? Go to a licensed professional mental health professional, because it's not the role of the kid, of your kids, of the child, of the minor to be taking on the responsibilities and being an emotional support for adults. It's not their responsibility. It's not. All right? You're damaging them. All right? When the parent is sad or lonely, it's up to the child to make them feel better, or at least feel their feelings with them. The boundaries are blurred and meshed. The child may lack any sense of emotional separation from the parent. And now that I'm trying to establish boundaries, because I didn't learn about boundaries until I got into therapy, like I said, a little over 2 years ago, it's the hardest thing to establish later on in life after you've lived a life of no boundaries and just chaos and dysfunction and toxicity, and now you're trying to get things in order so you can start living a more meaningful life. Shout out to my previous roommate and one of my good friends, good vibes with Gage. But seriously, when you're trying to get to a more meaningful life and get your life in order, it's the most hardest thing. It is so difficult. And a lot of the things like learning about boundaries, things that you should have been taught as a child, those of us that grew up with emotional incest and enmeshment, we don't have that. We weren't allowed to have boundaries. Hello? You had to take care of an adult. You had to worry about how they were feeling and how they were going to come in the house. I knew, like, if my granny had a very hard day at work, that was on me. I can't go out and play with other kids because I have to be in the house with granny. When my mom was going through a very dark mental crisis episode, I didn't go to school. I didn't go to school for weeks at a time because of that. And I'm not saying this to necessarily bash my grandmother, bash my mother, shame my grandmother, but I am saying this to say mental health needs to be taken more seriously. Because a lot of people become collateral damage because other people can't get their mental health together. And this is also why we need universal health care. We need universal health coverage. Everyone deserves access to quality, affordable, accessible, and inclusive mental and physical health care coverage. Is emotional incest a form of neglect? Elevating a child to the role of supporter, an adult, can lead to neglect and emotional abuse. Like I said, this is a form of child abuse. And this is a form of mental and emotional psychological abuse. A parent who is overly dependent on a child can also be critical and neglectful. Parents who have traversed or inverted parent-child roles can refuse or be unable to provide appropriate support for the child. This can result in a confusing mix of love and abuse. And this is very true because I'm dealing with this now as an adult, dealing with my mom. It's like you literally think it's my job to provide for you. And it's not. And it never was. And because of her traumatic childhood, her upbringing, and her mental illnesses, on top of substance abuse, and again, a lot of the substance abuse with all of us, because I recognize that I use marijuana, I recognize that I drink alcohol and liquor, I recognize that I have a substance abuse, or I'm not going to say a substance abuse, but I use substances, right? And I feel like it's a spectrum, and that's a whole nother video. I'll get on it soon. But again, I've always felt like I have to take care of my mom. I have to look out for my mom. That's been my life. You know, a lot of people talk about when they became an adult, yeah, I'm going to buy my mom a house. These are things that I just knew that's my responsibility. You know, making sure that she gets her health, she needs to see her doctors, making sure that her bills are getting paid, making sure that she eats food, making sure that she's eating healthy food and not just candy and chips. It's just, these are things that I knew as a child, this is what I would be concerned about. I was a kid worried about these things, and I'm an adult worried about these things. It never stopped. So for me, it's like I never got to be a kid. I never got to be a teenager, really. You know, I was very, and you know how they always say, oh, well, that's an old soul. Is it that we're old souls, or is it that we had responsibilities that kids should have never had? Is it because we were dealing with emotional enmeshment, emotional incest? And this is sadly common in a lot of communities, all right? I'm going to put, and I'm going to read this because this is spot on. Again, you can read this yourself. Links will be in the description box below. Emotional incest, the outcome, what happens to the child that grows up to become the adult. You, me, others, okay? The impact of emotional incest on adult children can manifest in a variety of ways. They often have difficulty setting boundaries in relationships. They may also experience depression, shame, suicidal feelings, excessive guilt, anxiety, and social isolation. Emotional incest can rob a child of the ability to develop a normal pace, as they are forced into maturity at an early age and denied the opportunity to experience appropriate and supportive relationships. when they reach adulthood, they can experience dysfunctional adult relationships that perpetuate the cycle of unhealthy relationships. And this is why I'm always talking about narcissistic abuse, and why I'm always talking about these dysfunctional, toxic ass childhoods that a lot of us grew up in, and families that we grew up in. And you just continue to repeat the same cycle. So if you were dealing with somebody like me, this is, and I own up to it, I take full accountability. But this is why I can't do monogamy. I can't stand codependent people because of my mom. I recognize that. Because all my childhood, I had to take care of somebody. I had to look out for somebody. And I get tired of neediness because of my mom. And my granny is the same way, right? Only difference is my granny is financially like well off, doing her, stable. But the thing is, she would tell me all of the problems that she had. And again, why are you telling a kid your problems? Quite frankly, your kids really don't need to know about what you're going through. Because it's not a 5-year-old's responsibility to be trying to figure out any of what you're going through. And I'm saying it. Your kid is supposed to be a little selfish. They're a child. It's ridiculous to put that type of responsibility and stress on a kid. And a lot of y'all don't think about it like that. And so people become grown and we got all of these issues that we're trying to heal from. And healing, it takes time, energy, resources, support, grace. It ain't something that happens overnight. All right. Now I'm going to do a part 2 to this because this video is long. Part 2 is coming up next.